Hi everyone. Hi Lauren. Can you hear me okay? I'm in a new setting today. Okay, I hope you can hear me okay. Pretty sure you can. And here I am. And today I'm not in ESO and I'm not live. Today I am in a sweet, cozy game called Palia. And it's a mega multi-platform game for those of you unfamiliar with it. That means that it's, of course, online, multi, that you play with other people. It's not solo, it's not an RPG, but you mega a multi platform, online platform, because you could be on your PC, you could, or your computer, your Mac, your PC, you could be on Switch, you could be on Xbox, you could be on PlayStation, and we all can play together. So it's really awesome. And we're in a strange little world called Palia, and we're surviving humans. There's my little girl, and there's my little puppy, my little, I don't know, they have special names. I've only been playing this since May 10th, so I'm still learning the ropes and getting used to it. But one of the fascinating things I love about this game is that this is my land. This is where I live. And you can see I'm just giving you a quick view. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's expansive, and of course, so far, this is what I've done with my own little home. Everything beyond the mailbox, that's my cute little mailbox. Everything beyond the mailbox I have built and set up. So come on in and see what I'm doing in this fun little world. There's my little house that I've been decorating. And if we go down here, which is where I guess I'll start and read today, you're going to go into my little gardening workstation where I make seeds and I make preserves and I make fertilizer and worms to fish with. And you're going to get a glimpse of my little garden plot, which needs to be weeded. You see, there's some weeds right down there. And then harvested. Anything that's reached full growth, I harvest. And then I replant and start all over again. And there's all kinds of food. There's my watering hole where I get the water to water. And yeah, there's my windmill. Hi, windmill. All right, so I guess I'm going to start today by just looking right here on my cute little garden in this peaceful, bucolic countryside. called Palia. And yeah, that's where we'll start today. So, just a reminder, it's Thursday, and Thursday is the Faery with Teeth narration, read book 1 of the Faery-Chronicles, read by yours truly. So, we are now currently on page 205. That's where I'm going to continue reading from. So, without further ado, let's get with it. Kin. Time and space often disappear in Ireland. The past, present, and future all meet. Life takes on a surreal tinge, and just when it feels like things are all figured out and it's time to move forward, a curveball is thrown and someone strikes out. Kin felt as if he was striking out. He stood outside the yellow B&B which he abhorred, watching the road for the bus. He was in Ireland on sacred pilgrimage with a witch and a druid. Not only that, but he had felt it, or something pass right into him, not through him, but into him at Loch Crew, just as Vivian had said he would. He felt smug. Yes, he had felt it. Nobody else. Spotlight again. And to top it off, Vivian and Cian had both given him special attention, and in front of everyone. Why, even Vivian had walked down the hill beside him, her green eyes shining, dancing on him. Ken smiled to himself, relishing the image of Vivian walking next to him. If it hadn't been a pattern he had sworn to break after his first divorce, he would go for her, but Ellen would kill him. Life was easy for Ken. He had a good business, although he wanted to sell it, or rather let someone buy it, as his California angel psychic had advised him was the correct attitude to have during the process. His wife looked just as good now as she had before the baby, and besides that, she was Irish. This fact made him feel as if he had an edge on everyone else, as if it made him belong, fit in. He shoved his hands into the deep pockets of his range coat. On his head rested a wide-brimmed khaki hat. To top it off, he had an adorable 5-month-old baby girl, and he was a smart parent, too. Didn't think twice to pack the wee girl off to his parents or to Ellen's so they could jet set around the world. Why, he could go a month without seeing the wee girl and not miss her. He slung this statement around like it was a certificate of achievement. Of course, Ellen felt differently, although he tried to disguise it. He glanced at his wife, who stood in conversation with Shelby. Ken winked at Shelby, whose blue eyes were usually on him. No harm in flirting with her, although he certainly had no intention of acting on it. It was obvious she was attracted to him, and well, he just had fun toying with her. He liked her long blonde hair, but she was just a little too plump and withdrawn for him. He scanned the group. Marcella was attractive. She had nice dark blue eyes, serious kind of weepy eyes. She was wearing her hair different today, and he thought it looked like Vivian's hairstyle, parted off to one side and tucked back over an ear. The style definitely accentuated her high cheekbones. He could see the Injun blood in her. Blackfoot, she'd said. But Marcella was too anal, too proper with her southern ways, and besides, she was married to a jackass, and furthermore, She never met his eyes when he peered at her. Rose made him shudder. Not his cup of tea at all. Her breasts sagged down to her waist. God, why didn't she wear a bra? Besides, he hated tie-dye shirts and leggings, which she always wore. Maybe the same ones every day. Ugh. Now that was a disgusting thought. He studied the colors in her t-shirt, attempting to memorize them so he could check tomorrow. No sense of presentation. Ken was into presentation. Kat had that hippie look to her, but she wasn't as bad as Rose. But hell, she was a full-blown dyke. A scowl disfigured his face. He could feel the vile form at the back of his throat. Who the hell did she think she was, acting so high and mighty, too good for the rest of them? She never hung out with them, even last night at the B&B, when the rest of them had gathered for a little while in the living room before going to bed. She immediately went upstairs to her room. Never mind the fact that Steve always went straight to his room. He was a jerk. But when Kat started doing it, that really irked Ken. Those kinds of people were antisocial misfits. Ken looked at his wife. Ellen was by far the prettiest woman standing in the group. Not in the pilgrimage as a whole, mind you. There was Carla. She was pretty. She kind of reminded him of Ellen, except she was shorter than Ellen. But Carla didn't give him the time of day, too busy taking care of the mundane aspects of the tour. Then there was Donna. She was probably pretty in her heyday, but she was much too old for him now. And of course there was Vivian. Vivian was something to look at. He'd catch himself staring at her, wondering what she'd be like in bed. If it wasn't for Ken believed he'd still be in her spotlight, but with the druid around, she paid little attention to him. Gad, Ken disgusted him. How could Vivian be friends with Ken? Didn't she know what he himself was worth? It was obvious Ken was worthless, had nothing to his name, just another Irish bum on the dole. Actually, it didn't matter which country you were in. His kind were all the same. Ken pulled the collar of his coat tighter, shivering. He leaned against the rock fence and folded his arms across his chest. He could feel his jowls clench, could feel the stirring, swirling cloud forming inside his head as it always did before an episode came on. He struggled for composure, fighting off the anxiety attack, but an unfathomable jealousy rose to the surface with each thought he had of Ken. Hate burned on the coals of an ancient memory so far beneath the surface of consciousness that he'd never find it on his own. Faery-Chronicle entry 2.222.1. Ken was indeed losing control. He could feel the perspiration beating on his upper lip, the sheen appear on his forehead, his vision blur. His breathing shifted as his mind became clouded even more with the pressure of the anxiety. Between short gulps for air, the midst of time and space separated him from the present time and place until he stood in a different place, in a past time. The energy of the past few days and actually being in Ireland with both Vivian and Ken had provoked a residue of envy trapped within the DNA of his cells. He looked at the priestess and held burning desire. He looked at him and hated. A buzzing suddenly filled Ken's ears. His teeth clamped together. For one split second, Ken believed he was standing over a dead Ken, a bloody sword in his own hand. A weeping Vivian clung to her husband's body, the death blood staining her gown and smearing her hands. She looked up at him, a fierce look in her eyes, and snarled as she rose, lunging at him, clawing at his face with her bloody hands. His sword flashed above her, coming down on her neck and right shoulder. Crimson liquid sprayed, hitting his own face. Ken voluntarily bolted up. He shook. The light shifted, and the gloomy sky came back into focus. The small group was still clustered around him, talking and laughing. Oh, too weird. He shook his head and gulped. Here they come, said Steve. A stogie jutted from his mouth, smoldering. What the hell is Joe driving? Ken would make sure he didn't sit next to that idiot. The sight of the man disgusted him. He took a step forward from the wall and watched the van come to a stop, the past life memory fleeing conveniently from the recesses of his conscious mind. Hey, Joe, called Steve. Where's our bus? And there you have it. That's the end of our first chapter for today. How do you like that? So let's see. I guess it's pretty quiet today. I'm going to move to another location and walk over here, take you over here to the pavilion and the beautiful fountain. We miss seeing it at night, but that's okay. I'm working on this. Is a work in progress, by the way. I don't have everything done. But here we are. Cup of tea in the afternoon. Maybe someone will grill something. Maybe a sweet foofy drink. See, look at my yummy treats. And maybe the singer will come in a little bit. She likes to play electric guitar. Oh, you want to see the singer right now, you say? All right, hold on just a sec. I'll get her out for you because she likes to perform. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Yeah, I like this space too. It's really sweet. And there's a really cute little countryside that is around and about. Okay, let me get out of this little closed area. We'll stand right here at the fountain and see how pretty it is. How's that? As we just enjoy the space. All right, continuing on with our story on page 209. Now we go into the creep factor. This is the seriousness of this fairy with teeth. Are you ready? Page 209. Forces of darkness. Sean McDowell wore the tainted essence of the Earl of Desmond. He worked the dead soul's blackness. He knew that each time Vivian McFarlane came to his lock, she brought with her people whose energy could be used. Her power was indeed growing stronger, and this made her germane to his work. But the druid who traveled with her now seemed to protect her. He knew that if they learned to channel their powers, they would be a threat to his kingdom. She was a sensitive. She felt the power in his land, whereas the druid knew the power in his land. The old man had become aware of Vivian the first time she came to the loch, and watched how it affected her, saw how it had drawn her in. She held that look in her eyes, an inner knowing, a look of innocence, but that didn't matter. Sean McDowell had tasted the air around her, knew she had to be gotten rid of. He had almost had her that first twilight, when she sat in argument with her companion, the red-haired woman from Dublin, who was useless to him after being easily manipulated to provoke Vivian's anger. How Vivian's anger had flared, feeding the dark powers, feeding legions. In fact, she had almost given in to its pull, almost, until she snapped awake, before being pixie-led into the bog, before being sucked down into the black waters. He had paid for that lost offering. She escaped a second time that very same night, and all because of the banshee coming to her aid, wailing through the night, forcing the woman into a terror run. Holding her head down, she had bellowed right through the Siambra, the ghost's darkness, the giant shape looming up before her, blocking the path as it moved into the shadow of the ash grove. Had she looked up and met the eyes of that ghost, Sean McDowell would have won her soul. She would have walked with him into the shadow of the marsh, never to be seen again. She had foiled him a second time that visit, and that's when he had taken a greater interest in her. Eventually, Vivian came back to his loch, but he had not had time for her and her entourage. Katie, his wife, had died suddenly, and so he had to rightfully mourn her. After all, he couldn't draw too much attention to himself, although he had entrapped the wills of many of the townspeople long ago. There were, however, the good Catholics who kept to the west side of the village. He had no need for them. Besides, when Vivian visited that time, she was too distracted with her young child, although that would have maybe, just maybe, made her easy prey. Sean McDowell smirked at the memory. There had been only one opportunity that third visit, but the druid had set over Vivian in waiting. His energy focused around her as she called on the power of Onya. The druid's protection had been good, and this surprised Sean McDowell because he had not expected her to turn up with the priest in tow. Even the bull and the herd of bovine that clustered around her ceremony looked down without so much as a desire to bellow her and the three other women away. So much for lost opportunity. Nonetheless, she was back, a fourth time to his loch, and the challenge was on and taken. However, now she was strong, no doubt about that. He had felt power rising from her as they sat beside each other last night. There was a definite change in her. She knew who she was, which made her all the more desirable and dangerous at the same time. Although faint, he had also sensed a very weak energy connection between her and the druid, had almost seen the ribbon flowing between the two. Sean McDowell wondered if the man had become her lover. If so, there would be a battle. He shook his weary head. As a couple, he might still be able to manipulate her, though, especially if that bond was newly established, or not quite established, which the sorcerer felt was more the case, which would mean it wasn't magically sealed yet. The old man rubbed his eyes. The drink was killing his body. Ah, what the hell. He'd soon have to find another one anyway. This body had a few more years left, but it was becoming a burden. He glanced at the clock, Katie's clock. It read 9:30. If she hadn't called by now, she wasn't going to. This thought made him angry. He grabbed the phone and punched in a number. "Nothing's open to them," he said before slamming the handset back in the cradle. Black clouds rolled over the loch. He was in a foul mood now. Grumbling he stood and made his way to the back door. He fetched a glass container from the cold box, then stepped outside. The door slammed shut behind him. He made his way to a small stone circle located on his property. It was an old one, all right, old and tainted. He stopped in the center and turned toward the lock. Uncapping the container, he poured red liquid onto the earth as he mumbled an incantation. Forces of darkness, gates of hell, open before me, legions come now to me. An angry wind blew from the north. The water of the loch turned black. Whitecaps jumped to the surface as the wind whipped across it, forming a rough mass of small waves. A solitary white swan floating in the water angled for the small island in the middle of the loch to take refuge there. A foul stench began to rise from the marshes, edged with cattails and the green stalks of meadow sweet just budding. Grazing cattle in the pasture on the far side of the loch bunched together as a tribe of ravens suddenly took flight. Their circling bodies dotted the sky with blackness, their cries a cacophony of foreboding. Well, that is the second chapter for today. I decided I wanted to read Down at the Water's Edge, so let's go down here. Yeah, let me take a little drink of water. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Okay. Continuing on with our next chapter, page 212. A change of plans. Okay, people, listen up, Vivian said, turning in her seat. Plans have changed today. You'll have to trust me on this one, but we won't be working the land at Loch Gur. No ceremonies at the loch today. Grumbles of dissent rumbled behind her. She ignored them. Listen up, Kian's voice boomed from the front seat. Vivian threw him a grateful smile. We will visit the site. We'll go to the interpretive center and see the film, and the museum, both worth seeing. Then we'll have us a walkabout on Knockadune. Afterwards, we'll have lunch somewhere in Bruff on our way to Knockanya. Vivian leaned forward. That's the road, she whispered to Joe. Yeah, I remembered this road. How could I forget? He said. John Riley's pub was the street landmark. Several cars were already parked outside its mustard yellow exterior. The banner hanging above the front door was that of a black horse carrying a knight cloaked in black armor. The banner read, Loch Gur Inn. Joe guided the bus around the next turn. Overhead, black storm clouds massed. The daylight grew darker. Faery-Chronicle entry 2.222.2. There are sayings that are so subtle a human can miss it. Then there are some signs that speak blatantly to the observer. Most, however, are disregarded or shrugged off to coincidence. Those that came at the loch were considered and discussed by the entire group. No one, not even Steve the skeptic, disregarded them. When experiences are noted as taking place in a time out of time way, usually they are washed in sepia tones. This day of the pilgrimage was time out of time, washed in sepia tones. and the true ordeal undergone not recognized for its worth during its unfolding, but rather denied by the mind in order to survive the process of events. Several members of the group saw the darkness of the loch in the sky, the intensity registering on a subliminal level. Others chose to avoid the darkness, turning their attention to understanding events such as those that took place at Ishnach or Loch Crew, or even the examination of childhood memories. They were mortals who were, for the moment, untouched by the ravens of the Earl. 3 times he poured the red liquid upon the earth, and 3 times he called forth the forces of darkness. Only on the last summoning did the old body of Sean McDowell threaten to collapse under the stress. Buckling to his knees, he rested his hands on his thighs, with chin to chest and eyes closed. His breathing became laboured. He entertained the thought of taking over the body of the druid, which would be a good thing to do, albeit hard. This thought caused his eyes to pop open. He relaxed his head to one side. A thick tongue lay placid between parted lips, pressed against his lower teeth. Red-rimmed, angry eyes focused on the distant loch. Too bad he couldn't see the Clogans of the Interpretive Centre and Museum. Didn't need to, really. He could feel her approach, feel her feet touch the land. The wind rippled across the water, hitting the grass, whipping Vivian's hair into her eyes. She struggled to catch the strands as she mounted the steps to the Cultural Center and Museum. She pulled the hair away from her eyes and stopped. "No way!" she hissed, her mouth falling open in disbelief. An iron door barred their progress. In silence, Cian skipped up the last 2 steps and gave the gate a rattle. "Locked?" he said, turning. "It can't be," Vivian said, gulping the air that rushed into her mouth and looking around the area in hopes of finding another way in. "Look," she pointed. "That sign reads open. Plus, I scheduled this visit in advance. We made reservations." She turned to Carla. "That's right, I made them," confirmed Carla, her lips shivering. "The lights are on inside," said Ellen helpfully, one hand holding the top of her hat to her head so it wouldn't blow away. I wonder who owns that car parked below," asked Donna. "Now what?" demanded Cian, pulling his khaki hat off his head and stuffing it in one of his coat's large front pockets. "Unbelievable," Vivian said. She searched Cian's face for an answer. "Look, I'll walk down to that little pub over there and see what's up," he offered, pointing to a red barn-like wooden structure at the far side of the parking lot. Silently, the group followed Cian down the steps and part way across the parking lot, passing its solitary car, everyone mutely eyeing it. Raindrops sputtered off heads and shoulders, slamming against the ground. "Look, why don't you all wait under the trees up there?" encouraged Cian, pointing to a small grove of beech saplings. With a nod, Vivian headed for the shelter. The others followed behind. Cian continued in the other direction. He moved quickly like he was in a race, hurrying to the finish line. The prize? To read the contents of the envelope he now fingered in his pocket. Cian rounded the corner of the barn, checked to be sure he was out of sight, and pulled the envelope free. He ripped it open and pulled out the note. The same neat script lived on the page. He read with anguish the second poem. "If I came here to know you. If I came here just to know you, I don't know why. If the fairy are playing with me, if you are playing with me, just playing with me, I don't know why. If you love me, then why? If you love me, just tell me why this happened. Kian leaned back against the side of the barn, his mouth slack, eyes closed, his hand curled into a fist around the paper, crushing it into a tight ball. Oh, bullocks, he swore through gritted teeth as an avalanche of pain crashed down on him. Vivian, how could you be such a heartless bitch? That's the end of that chapter. I know these chapters are pretty small, or short, I should say. All right, let's go over here, look from another sunny perspective. We're coming out from underneath the shadow, I think, maybe, for a little bit. I love the sound of the birds. Look at how pretty that landscape is. Okay. All right, we are continuing on today. Page 216. Neve and her Oshun. An army of gnats danced in the air under the trees. Yuck, Kat said, swatting at the bugs. Maybe it would be better if we waited for Kian in the parking lot, said Steve. Wait wherever you'd like, said Vivian, settling down on the exposed dirt beneath the trees. Those interested, have a seat. I'll tell you a story while we wait. For the first time, Vivian afforded herself a peek at the lake. Its black waters flowed away from the shore, circling Gerald's Isle in the middle of its body. To the right rose Knockfinnel. Sheep grazed on the grass there. She had not yet been up that hill. And to the left rose Knockadoon. On this hill, once an island, was a forested cliff. The ruin of Beaucair's castle peeked above the lower body of trees. Glimpses of a path wound through the trees. Vivian shuddered. There, on that path, running through those trees, she had met a dark being. There, she had heard the cry of a banshee. A wind whipped through the trees above. Glancing up, she sensed a presence and swallowed. Bad land, echoed through her mind. Lowering her gaze back to the lake, she began her tale. In an age so distant that the exact age is unknown, Finn McCool and his Fianna roamed the green hills of Era. It was a peaceful time then, the golden age. One day, as Finn and the Fianna were hunting, they paused to have food and drink. And in their resting, a rider approached them from the west. The band of foot soldiers watched in awe as a lady riding a white steed stopped before them. She was by far the most beautiful woman they had ever seen. Her golden hair hung in the ringlets down to her waist. Her eyes were as blue as robin's eggs. Her cheeks were rosy, and her lips were ruby red. She wore an azure gown covered with silver filigree stars. On her feet she wore silver silk slippers. A golden mantle draped over the steed's back, falling to the ground in long cascading fringes. A golden bridle and bit was upon the beast's head and in its mouth. His mane was braided in tiny strands, tied off with hundreds of tiny silver bells that jangled each time his hoofs touched the ground. Golden shoes were fitted to the bottom of each hoof. The two were a lovely sight to behold. "What brings you here, fair lady?" Finn did ask. "I am the daughter of the king of Tir na nog," she replied, to which all the soldiers exclaimed and looked amongst themselves. "I have come to your land because I have heard tales of a soldier who is the greatest in all Era, and he is the man whom I wish to take as my husband." "And what is the name of this lucky soldier?" asked Finn. "Why, he is your son Oshun," she replied. And when hearing his name, Oshun did step away from his companions and approach the fairy princess. "I am he," said Oshun. She gazed upon his face and smiled. Extending her arm, she offered him her slender, delicate hand. "Come with me, Oshun, to the land of youth. There you will have abundance, merriment, and eternal youth. For sickness, death, or poverty has no place there. You shall be a king in this place, and a champion among champions." She spoke to him of many delights, too numerous to recount. Taking her hand, he hoisted himself onto the steed's back behind her. He looked upon the solemn face of his father and all the Fianna. "I must go meet my destiny, and I accept her as my wife," said he, with a sad farewell. She pulled the reins of her charge, and the steed carried them swiftly across the land. When they came to the western sea, the fairy horse galloped into the waves, charging under the sea. And soon they were riding across a plain in a lovely land. All the promises Niamh made to Oshun were met, and they lived in Tir na nog, happy and content. They were wed and had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. 5 years had gone by since Oshun left Erin's shore with his fairy bride. And one day, while out walking, his thoughts returned to his homeland. He felt a deep longing to return. "I miss my father and my companions," Oshun sadly told her. "Oh, my husband," cried Niamh, "you must not return. You would not be happy there. Much has changed." But Oshun was insistent. Twice more she begged him not to go, and when he insisted, she sadly acquiesced. A great sorrow had come over her. "If you must go, my beloved," she said, hand clutching her chest, "then you must take my white steed, for he knows the way and will bring you safely back. But I give you this warning. Let not your feet touch the land of Erin, my husband." Oshun, filled with happiness, wrapped his arms around her. "I will not," he said. Niamh, fearing he had not hurt her, warned him again. "No, my husband, hear me. Let not your feet touch the land of Erin." Oshun again acknowledged that he would not. And when at last he was ready to depart, Oshun sat astride the back of the fairy horse. Niamh stood by its side. She gazed up into her lover's eyes. "My love, my life," she whispered, tears glistening on her cheeks. A third and final time, I give you this warning. Let not your feet touch the land of Ireland. And I promise I will not, Oshun replied sadly, for he hated to see his wife so distressed. He leaned over and kissed her lips tenderly. Sitting straight, he reined the beast. As it rose on its hind legs, Oshun and Neve's eyes met. She reached out her hand to him as the steed galloped away. "Come back to me, my husband," she whispered. But Oshun, hearing not what she said, simply smiled and raised his hand in farewell. Across Tir na Nog, into the waves and under the sea, the fairy horse carried Oshun until he found himself on the Emerald Isle once again. It soon became very apparent that much had indeed changed in Ireland, for everywhere he stopped and inquired after Finn and the Fianna, the people exclaimed that 500 years had passed since their time. He heard his own name mentioned as the hero who went with the fairy princess to live in the land of immortal youth. "But I'm he," Oshun would insist, meeting with their laughter. He would then ride on. At last he came to a place where he had last seen his father and comrades, and there was a group of men trying to move a large boulder with a wooden lever. They called to the handsome, strong-looking youth who approached them on the back of a grand steed to come lend his strength and help them move the boulder. Oshun guided the steed up to the end of the lever and, leaning over, applied the full weight of his body to it. In the blink of an eye and the sound of cracking, Oshun fell to the ground as the leather saddle strap broke under the horse's belly and slid sideways off the beast. The image of Neve filled his vision as he crashed against the land. A great sorrow filled Oshun's heart. Slowly he rose, looking up into the astonished faces of the onlookers, for before their very eye the handsome, strong youth withered and shrunk into an ancient man. And there Oshun died, never to return to the land of youth, never to return to his Neve. Vivian's story had woven a spell of enchantment. The pilgrim sat with eyes transfixed on her face. "What does it mean?" asked Mark, breaking the silence. "I'll bet it means obey your wife," Steve stressed. Vivian shot him a sharp glance, shaking her head. "It means when a fairy gives you advice, listen to it and do it, because if you don't, it might cost you your life," she said. Steve snarled, but he didn't willingly touch the ground. "It was an accident. The saddle broke," he whined. Vivian looked him in the eye. "Sure, it was his fault," she said steadily. "He went, didn't he?" "Yeah, but he didn't intentionally touch the ground." Vivian shook her head and looked away. "I think, dear," Marcella interrupted, her southern drawl sounding all the more southern, "what Vivian means is that Neve advised him not to go, not to leave Tir na Nog." "Exactly," confirmed Vivian. "Oh," mumbled Steve. "That was wonderful, Vivian," said Rose, a silly grin on her gnomish face. "That's the best version of Oshun's visit to Tir Nanug that I've ever heard. Thank you." A ripple of thank yous flowed from the group. Vivian smiled and stood, brushing the debris from her jeans. "Here comes Kian," she said, glancing up. "Let's see what he's found out." "Well, I've news for you," Kian said, halting before them. He leaned on the hazel staff, eyes dark and intense. "The pub's closed." "In Ireland?" exclaimed Ellen in disbelief. "And on a Saturday? That doesn't make sense." "The sign says open, but the door is locked," he confirmed. "Strike two," said Ken. "Now what?" "Well, I guess out to Knockadoon then," said Vivian. Ken immediately took the lead. Marcelo, Rose, Steve, and Mark grouped around him in a commotion. Kat and Shelby came next, followed by Ken and Ellen, and directly behind them, Donna lagging, falling farther behind. Vivian and Carla stood at the path gate on the parking lot side and watched the group disappear around a bend, the array of ash trees cloaking the group. "What's going on?" Carla questioned Vivian, her eyes holding an unspoken fear. "Badland. Bloodland," said Vivian, shaking her head. I don't know, but something's up." They moved slowly down the path, following the others. "Look, I need to talk about Beltane," said Vivian. "Wait," urged Carla. "What do you mean by Badland, Bloodland?" "Well, it means there's blood spilling going on," Vivian said. "Blood sacrifice?" "Right?" "That's right. Animal and, I don't know, possibly human." "But who?" "I don't know," answered Vivian. "This is pretty serious then." "Yeah, it is," answered Vivian. A gust swirled off the lake. A chill hung in the air. The clouds darkened, blotting out another fragment of light. Vivian glanced to the left. Through the trees she could see the site of the castle. Why hadn't she noticed how close it stood to the path before now? "Have you figured out more about Banva and Fatla?" asked Carla, drawing her back. Relief came. Effortlessly time bent as Vivian opened her inner vision to the morning of Beltane, and the awareness danced inside her brain. She shared her thoughts with her friend, keeping her eyes on the path before them, watching as the group flashed in and out of view between the gaps in the trees. For a few seconds she could see the back of Kian, his long brown ponytail hanging down the back of his green jacket. And this brought a smile to her lips. "Do you really believe we are Banva and Fatla?" Vivian asked. "Yes!" replied Carla, tugging at her day pack. "Yes, I do. In all the years I've known you, Vivian, you've never claimed to be anyone, let alone a goddess. You even claim that you don't really believe in past lives or..." She paused. "I believe in past lives," Vivian said quietly. "Well, I know," affirmed Carla. "What I mean is, you say past life regressions aren't important, that most people use past life memory as a crutch in this life, or as an excuse to continue a negative behavior or pattern." "Look, I've never believed I was or am a goddess," said Vivian. "But you are Banva," stated Carla. "Banva is an Irish goddess. I believe I'm Fatla," she said, claiming the persona with both hands. "It makes perfect sense," she added. "We have always felt like sisters and know we are karmically connected. We're both drawn to Ireland. I believe Joe is Maquette." Carla stopped, grabbing Vivian by the arm. "Have you ever looked at his hands?" "No." "They're really big. They're as big and as broad as Maccool's hands are, long and slender. He has the hands of a plow god, strong and reliable, just like he is now." "When did you notice his hands?" asked Vivian. Last night in the bus, when he was working on the engine, I thought they looked like mechanics' hands. You know, they had grease under the nails. And then this morning it hit me that he had the perfect hands to be maquette. Vivian's mind swirled. But I thought you said they were IRA, Carla. Well, Carla struggled, looking for the right response. Well, whoever they are in this life doesn't discount who they were in a past life. She let go of Vivian's arms and the two continued walking. Vivian wondered if she'd made a mistake sharing these things about Bonva and McCool and Lou with Carla. You really feel, Fatla? She asked after a pause. Yes, Carla confirmed with full conviction. Well, it would be something if I were really Bonva, and Kian was McColl, and you were Fatla, and Joe was Maquette. Vivian laughed. I must be crazy if I believe that, she mumbled to herself. Okay, but who is Era? Carla asked suddenly, oblivious to Vivian's discomfort, lost in her own desire to share the same experience with Vivian, regardless of whether or not she believed Carla was going to pretend that she was Fatla. Vivian glanced at the side of Carla's face, the pug nose, the thin lips, and the small dark eyes. Vivian shook her head and sighed heavily. I don't know, she said, a nervous giggle following her words. She scratched the back of her head. But, you know, Era was never with Bonva when Fatla was around, or vice versa. Usually one of them was at Ishnok with Bonva while the other would be at Sleeve Mish down south. So maybe that's where she's now. A mock smile spread across Vivian's face. She shook her head and sighed. All right. Things are getting complicated on that particular pilgrimage. And I'm going to stop reading here because I don't want to start another chapter. And I'm going to tell you this. If there's only one narration you really truly listen to, maybe it's next week. Because, well, it's going to be the full 9 yards of evil. Thank you for joining me today in Palia. This is where you can find me most days now, at some point either during the day or the night. And I'm usually here for a couple of hours, and I spend quite a bit of time in my home, but I'm also out and about doing different quests. As you can see to the side, It Takes a Village, Proof of Magic, Lock and Key. Those are the 3 quests I'm currently working on. Okay. Thanks for tuning in and listening. And to those of you who listen silently and quietly, you know, the people we call the lurkers, I'm going to call you the watchers, right? Because that's what you're doing. Look at how beautiful this land is. Seriously, isn't this a gorgeous landscape? Okay. Thanks. Let's see. Bye. Oh. Until next week. Thanks for being you.